You're on.
Okay. Sorry, we had to wait to be electrified. Welcome to our design review board meeting, full design review board meeting of July 16th. 1, 2, 3, we have a quorum this evening. So we'll start off with, I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
A second. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we have this part of the meeting called members' comments, and I gather there's some folks here that want to speak. If you have comments about a specific item on the agenda, if you can wait till we get to that item, that's best. So then it's all kind of at one point. But there's some folks here that wanted to talk about the Round Pebble Lane, and I got a sheet here, and it looks like there are a couple of you that want to talk. So we limit you to 3 minutes, and we'll start. I can call the names off of here, and I'll try not to butcher them too badly. Let's see, Round Pebble. Okay, most of these are saying, okay. Holly, weather, something?
Weatherwax, yeah.
Okay, come on up if you want to stand over here, and I see the green light is on, so
Okay, thank
we'll
you.
be able to hear you.
My name is Holly Weatherwax, and I've owned a home on Round Pebble Lane for 18 years. I grew up in Reston, and I've owned 4 homes in Reston since 1987. Additionally, I'm a local realtor, and I regularly help my clients navigate the rules of the clusters and neighborhoods and help them resolve DRB concerns and violations. One of the primary suggestions that I make to my clients is to find precedent for the project within the community, which brings me to the approval of the structure at 1148 Round Pebble Lane. If I could ask everybody in our neighborhood to stand up that's been able to join us tonight. We have a lot of people that are very concerned about this structure. I'm not here to object to the approval of this structure. I understand the owners followed the process and the approval has been given to the DRB. My purpose here tonight is to share with you several concerns I have about the structure and the DRB process. Right or wrong, neighbors signed off on this addition. We may never know if they fully understood what they were signing off on, and we may never know if they had all the information they should have had to sign the approval. In any case, I would have expected the DRB to look out for the interest of the community by digging deeper into whether or not this structure was appropriate for our neighborhood. In other words, I expect the DRB to look out for the community and not approve things that were in the interest of all, and only approve things in the interest of all the homes and not just this one. The approved structure is incompatible with our community at a size of approximately 2,700 square feet. I've personally owned 2 Reston homes that were not as large as this addition. The style of the structure, a 4-sided building connected to the existing home by only a narrow 2-story hallway, is not compatible with other additions in our neighborhood. The approved building does not visually match our neighborhood. The windows are very different. It looks like it belongs in Colonial Williamsburg, not on our street. Ensuring the compatibility of additions should be one of the highest priorities for the DRB. My third concern is that the approval required that the owners not remove trees, but it did not, at least as far as I'm aware, require extensive landscaping. There should have been a requirement for screening of this structure from Reston Parkway and from the neighbors. As far as I know, there was not. I've seen the DRB require landscaping and other approvals, and I'm not sure why this one didn't require it. This brings me to my final concerns, which are more community and less neighborhood specific. What will happen when you receive an application for a similar structure on another lot? How will you be able to deny that that homeowner has right to build a second structure when it's already been allowed on this lot? I'm asking the DRB to put rules in place that make this structure a one-time approval and not a precedent that can be used to create a series of structures that owners build on their properties throughout Reston. I'm requesting you consider modifying the approval process to keep this sort of thing from happening again. I would ask you to consider adding the following requirements: that neighbors be required to initial all pages submitted to the DRB as part of the application, including pictures and drawings, which will allow you to know that the neighbors have had access to the complete package. That you identify some way to notify the community when an exceptional addition is being reviewed. Yes, we all missed the appeal period, but frankly, we didn't know there was an application made, and therefore we were unaware there was an appeal period. Letters to the neighborhood are the most expedient way of notification, although I acknowledge that would be expensive. Another option would be to ask the homeowner to hand deliver notice to everyone on their street or within parameters determined by the DRB. And lastly, there's always email notification. I thank you for your time, and I hope that you can find a way to make sure that this structure does not start the beginning of second homes built on half-acre lots in Reston.
Thank you. James Williams?
Sure. I'm Ryan Lonette. James asked if I don't want to do the next.
That's fine, that's fine. We always ask people if we try not to repeat everything that was just said.
Try not to.
The floor is yours.
Well, maybe I should pause. So are you familiar with the property we're talking about? Does
Oh, yeah.
it ring a bell?
Yes.
And has anyone been out to maybe inspect or see if it's coming along the way that it was expected to
I
be
believe
built?
so. Yeah.
Staff has. So could anyone maybe raise your hand, like who's personally familiar with what we're talking about, with the way that it looks?
No,
I'm just curious.
I think everybody is.
Okay. So my name is Ryan Lynette. I'm at 1121 Round Pebble Lane. I've been a proud Restonian for 20 years. I'm very active in the community, especially youth sports, and I love Reston. I have 2 experiences with DRB. Both of them have been very great, very great. One, we had some neighbors who removed some screening trees from my property we lived on at Springhouse Place, and you guys were really helpful at getting trees, put back up that were going to give us screening sooner than the neighbors had maybe planned. The second one was where I asked for, I had signatures from affected parties to paint my fence and deck rails white, but DRB didn't approve it. They wanted you to weather naturally. And although it didn't go my way, I appreciated the covenants intended to preserve the excellence and design from the neighborhood and consider the effect on the neighbors and enhancing the property value for everybody. So I'm here to talk about 1148 as well. And in those previous cases, there was concern about the harmony with the overall community design. In this case, is very similar, as Holly mentioned. Talking about the architectural compatibility with the other neighborhood homes and maintaining a visual and physical harmony with style and proportion. The design of this house, which is fully visible as you enter our neighborhood from Reston Parkway, that does seem an egregious violation of compatibility standards. I can't think of another house in Reston or anywhere that I've seen with this design. For the sake of, if I didn't have a 3-minute limit, I'd ask, can anybody tell me a house that looks like this? People are having trouble selling their homes in this premier neighborhood in Reston right now. And I've heard feedback that the curb appeal is a factor in that. So I do believe that prices are dropping on some of these homes, and so it's difficult not to connect the dots and say that this situation isn't having a material impact on property values in our neighborhood. I haven't measured it myself, but I'm wondering, now if they have approval to put a deck on the back of all this after looking at some of the plans. Design standards speak to roofs and windows, as Holly talked about. The windows don't seem the same. And I have only seen roofs like this on courtyard-style houses, but the courtyard is usually a functional living area. Sometimes with enough room for a pool, you could barely fit a bathtub in between the gap in these houses. I can't imagine if townhomes were built with a 15-foot gap in between. The windows are looking at other walls or the windows in the other structure. It's odd. So, in my opinion, and the opinion of some who I'm speaking for tonight, it looks like an architectural mistake and not at all harmonious.
Okay, thank you.
So I have 2 questions. Was it a mistake? Did you approve something that shouldn't have been approved, or did they build something different than what was submitted? And what can you do to help us now, perhaps with screening?
Okay, thank you. We'll discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
Kayla Schaff?
Oh, James Williams. I traded spots with him.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Go ahead.
Yeah, James Williams. I've been living in Round Pebble Lane for 17 years, fully aware of all of the tight restrictions for everything to do with the exterior look. And so, to me, this again, I want to reiterate that it's an out of proportion change, that he can't paint his fence white, but yet somebody can build a second house behind their house, and that just doesn't seem to align with the strict rules of Reston. So really would like you to re-examine the rules to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. But my other concern, my unique concern from what hasn't been expressed, is that this looks to me like somebody's building a VRBO addition. I mean, we looked it up, and there are hundreds of VRBO listings in Fairfax County, and it just seems to me like that a family that's been there this long, who doesn't have a huge amount of family, why would they spend this kind of money to build this huge addition that's as big as a house that has a complete gap between their existing house and only connected by a couple of very narrow hallways? To me, that says, I'm building a VRBO. And that means that we're gonna have people parked on the streets right there at the entrance to our house, and we'll have, very little control over who is living there. And, I feel sorry for the people living next door if that turns out to be true. But, if I'd looked at the plans, if I'd been the next door neighbor and I looked at the plans, I'm like, gee, why do you need, 5 bedrooms with all independent, entrances into a hallway? That doesn't sound like a family house to me. So hopefully somebody looked at those plans with that in mind to make sure that this is indeed a family house addition and not a VRBO addition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kayla Shaw?
Ours is a separate property, so ours is not at the round whatever, lane.
Okay, you just said you wanted to speak on the Round Pebble stuff. No?
No,
Okay.
speak on our property.
Okey-dokey.
Windstead?
Ryan Lonnet?
That was me.
Oh, that's you, okay. And is that it? Is there anyone else that has a member's comment? Okay, thank you all. In that case, we'll move on to our agenda. And the first one we have is Thrush Ridge.
I thought you said that you would discuss it. We would do that.
Not in this meeting. We don't discuss members' comments in this meeting. We receive them, and, if we, at some point, we'll all discuss it and discuss the process. We do that frequently. Every year, we go through all the design guidelines, revise the ones we think that need revising. So it's hard to say exactly what will happen, but when I say we'll discuss it, we'll discuss it.
So my question isn't about what we're gonna do for the future and what about the guidelines. I'm asking, since most people raised their hand and said, and sorry, I want to be respectful of the process here, right? But we've shown up, right? And like I said, I'm representing other people who's concerned. And since it's top of mind, and since you're familiar with this house, was this a mistake? If we're talking about being harmonious with the design of the rest of the neighborhood, is everybody who raised their hand comfortable raising their hand again and saying that this house is harmonious with other houses that are in Reston or in our neighborhood or
Yeah,
in Virginia?
I don't think that's why we're here tonight. I mean, members' comments are not an application. This came before a panel. There are only 8 of us now. We're looking for a 9th member. We have 3 panels of 3 members each, and then the full board, which is here tonight. The normal process would have been I'm trying to remember back, I think the next door neighbor, a person across the street, and someone else all signed the application, so the whole process.
5 houses down the block.
So we didn't know.
I'm not gonna argue with you about this, okay? Let me finish what I'm saying. This came to one of the panels. Had there been the opportunity to appeal it, it would have come to this board. We would have reheard the case, the application, everything you all have to say. That didn't happen. So we're kind of out of the loop in that one, in that sense, because within our system, there's no way we can rehear that. So we'll all try to learn from this experience and see what we can do, but we're not in the position to rehear the application tonight. That's not why we're here.
So that's why we're here. So I
Okay.
just wanted to see if anybody who raised their hand before would mind raising their hand again, saying that they still believe that this is harmonious. Because something
I really don't think we should get into that. That's not why we're here. It would take a lot of
It is
discussion.
why
It
Can I
would-
speak?
If you let me finish my sentence. Thank you. We would have to be seeing all of the drawings of several of the people here weren't on that panel. I don't recall exactly who was on the panel, but maybe 1 or 2 of us were on that panel. The other people may or may not be as familiar with the house as some of the rest of us. So it would be kind of inappropriate to try to discuss this. That period just wouldn't be. Yes, ma'am.
I am an original owner of the neighborhood. I watched every house in that neighborhood be built. And that's 25 years ago. My family did add an addition onto the house, all right? We did have it approved by the DRB. with the very stringent rules, that it would be harmonious with our home, that the windows would match, that the percentage of the windows to the walls would fit with Fairfax County, all right? And I remember the DRB that approved it at that time, and that's 15 years ago, it was 2003, 2004, commended us on how well we planned that addition. And I believe most people, if not everybody here in this neighborhood, would say how well our addition blended into our home, all right? It also was, I mean, it was just a sunroom, it stuck off the back of the house. It got its necessary approvals, but not a person complained. This is a home. We had no idea that this was going to even go there. We were all guessing, what the heck are they building? Based upon the cement foundation that went in the winter. And then it became a guess upon guess upon guess as to what this is, until we all started to see the structure go up, all right? And until they put the little tiny hallway corridor, all right, between the wall and the kitchen window, all right, that's left from the original home, did we realize, wow. And when the windows went in, we looked and said, wow, now there's an entire 2 stories that match. There's a door to the exterior, to the backyard, which is no longer really a backyard. And that's when Holly drew to our attention as a realtor, wow, this is not only gonna be a multi-family home in our neighborhood, or it's gonna be a rental property, all right? Which our neighborhood, all right, does not need, all right? The estates of North Hills, okay, does not need an apartment complex at the entrance of our building.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
And I know we're disrupting your meeting, but I have a procedural question. You said that there's a group of 3 that reviews this plan. It was my understanding that the point of the DRB is to sort of save us from ourselves. I know plenty of people who've been sent back to the drawing board because of what they presented to the DRB, and I am in shock. And I've seen a lot of Reston, and I've seen a lot of things that people have fought to get approved, and things that, quite frankly, they haven't been able to get approved. And I am in shock every single day when I enter our neighborhood and I see that they've allowed to build a second home on their lot. I just can't even imagine how the DRB could fall down so far as to let this happen. And I get that we're out of turn here, but I feel like we haven't had the ability to say this because frankly, we didn't know it was happening.
okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna have to move on. Thank you all for coming. We'll go, as I said, back to our agenda for Thrush.
Is anyone here who hasn't seen it interested in seeing a picture of the house?
Not right now. We have a meeting we have to conduct.
No, is anyone curious based on hearing the passion from what people are anywhere? Is anyone at all who is familiar with this house interested in looking at a picture of this house? No one?
Not
I
right
feel
now.
like I wasted my time if no one.
I'm sorry you feel that way, but we have a meeting to conduct. You were part of members' comments. We have to move on with our agenda and the applications.
All right. That's disappointing. Really, no one is interested in at least seeing what all these people are talking about?
Not in the middle of a meeting where there's no application before us. I'm sorry. Okay, Thrush Ridge? No one here for Thrush Ridge? Pass that back. One over there. Never mind. Should we come back to Thrush Ridge? Were they not gonna be here tonight?
No, the affected party was supposed to be here tonight, and Moore was not. The affected party appealed, so.
No one's here for Thrush Ridge?
Didn't the affected party say she could not make it, was denied a continuance?
There was a second person, was the second
I think that's true, yeah.
Yeah, the second person was.
Well, why don't we can come back and discuss this later, so these other folks are here for other issues. We'll bump Thrush Ridge to the end of the agenda at this point. Okay, Windstead Lane?
Mr. Chair, point of order, just for the lawyer, could we do it with a motion to amend the agenda?
We have a motion to amend the agenda and move Thrush Ridge to the end.
So moved.
And a second. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
You happy?
I know.
I like that. Okay, Windstead Lane? Ah, someone's here. Good.
Really, the only thing I just wanted to say and see if you guys had any questions on the property. Yes. Oh, okay. I'm not the resident, but we did the letter of authorization to run everything.
My first comment is a very thorough set of drawings, and I
Thank you, appreciate it.
don't think there's any way of not understanding
Okay.
what you guys are presenting. It does also appear there's a house in the neighborhood, don't know how close to this house it is.
Right.
It's not identical, but very
Very similar, right.
in terms of the addition over the top of the garage. And I think the additions across the rear are pretty understandable. It's a screen porch and a deck. I didn't really have any questions. Why don't we come around up here and see if we have some questions. Mike, you got any questions?
No, the only thing I noticed when I reviewed it was the floodlights on the back in the proposed. Are those are motion censored? I'm assuming, or from what I saw, it said dusk to dawn. So I was afraid that they're just gonna be on all the time.
Yeah, we were planning to have them be motion sensed, correct.
And then I saw that I think they're 4,000 Kelvin or something. The only one I would suggest to get rid of is just there's one high one that to me is not really needing to light up your yard.
The one off of the
actual-
family room
The
edition?
one on the actual addition, because it's not actually lighting up any stairs or anything like that.
Okay.
That's my only comment, was that light just to me seems unnecessary.
Okay.
But, that's my only, otherwise, like Richard said, the application is very, very thorough, and it's nice where it shows what's old, what's new, what's getting removed, what's not. It's very, very clear. So that was very helpful when reviewing it, and overall it looks great.
What was your comment about the color temperature? Also, you'd started with.
It said 4,000 Kelvin. Usually we like to keep it lower, around 3,000.
Okay.
Or less, yeah, if possible. If they'd make a fixture like that, that's usually our recommendation, so.
Okay.
Okay, Bruce?
No comments.
Ben?
All good?
Neil?
No, just, I'm glad Mike brought up the floodlights. There's also a floodlight under the bay window? Or is that a decorative fixture?
Actually, there is currently a recessed can light there. That would just remain. It would just remain as ETR recessed light.
And back to the gable one, it either needs to disappear or move down lower?
Yeah, I was actually planning on doing two maybe and doing them at the gym level there, which is
Correct.
the level below the family room.
So they tuck up under the eave like the one on the corner
Right,
of the screen
correct.
porch? That's all.
Nick?
My only comment was about the lights, so I have no additional comments.
Yeah, and lastly, I felt it was an appropriate addition for this house. The windows look, it just looks good. I think it's well designed. And I don't have any problems with it. Do we have a motion from someone?
I move to approve the application as submitted.
I'll second that, but want to add the one stipulation about the light,
Good point.
the
Thank you.
double-headed light.
Do you require a resubmission on that type of stuff? Okay.
I think we just relocate it as discussed.
It'll show up in the decision letter.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything else. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. There you go.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sheraton Hotel, is she here? A lot of stuff you guys are showing tonight. I think what would, to me anyway, be most helpful is to point out differences between where you were, was it what, 8, 9, 10 years ago when you were here? Yeah, that's kidding.
A bit longer than usual. So, you all know I'm Brian Winterhalter with Cooley. Daniel Russell, I represent the owners.
Caitlin Eckroth, I represent the architect.
And we're going to briefly go through the changes. So just to refresh everyone's memory, we had been before you somewhat a while ago with a request for conceptual approval and which we received, and then we were going to come back with some additional information on materials, signage, lighting, and so forth. We've revised the overall concept.
Please.
Sorry. How much of should I go through? Should I just go through the entire presentation, or are you guys familiar with the property and need a little refresh, or? I'll just,
Very familiar with the property, as most people in Reston.
yeah. So here you have the existing plan and views. The main entry view you'll see from Sunrise Valley Drive is the top photo. The second photo is going to be your main image as you're a guest arriving, turning around the porte cochere. So that'll be your main entrance. And then the third building on the bottom, or the third image on the bottom, is the horseshoe part of the building. So pretty typical elevations. Oh, hey, look at that. Fancy. So this is a similar palette to what you saw in October. We've added a little bit more of an accent color with the green, but we're still looking at those natural tones, keeping the building a neutral color. The main building will be kind of a darker gray with some lighter accented panels with that lighter gray on, oh, excuse me, apologies. And yeah, it's on the screen, so. And also keeping with that warm wood flavor. And mostly we're gonna be looking at using those, maximizing those EFIS colors and also doing some kind of interesting control joint work. So this is, what we've done is we have our proposed views as well as what the previous view is in the upper left-hand corner for all the images. So what we'll be focusing on is this dark panel on the very end of the building with the chevron control joints that kind of mimic the Sheraton logo. And then using the accent lighter color on the flanking panels as well as kind of the building base. And you'll see those accent colors with the green and the wood tones on the fins throughout the building. So they kind of lighten the building up, give it a little bit of color, bring in the landscape, that kind of thing. And the wood, we're actually strategically using it to focus on the porte cochere area and to kind of give the guests a little bit more of a focal point as they come to the hotel. Same for this view, we're going to carry that green language kind of throughout the building on the fins, carry that dark ethos color throughout on the upper guest room levels, and to kind of hide those PTAC covers on all of the sides, and focusing that wood color at the main entrance there. We're toning it down from the approved conceptual design from October. It seemed a little bit more of an add-on, so we're trying to use the existing architecture of the building and just accentuate that. So that's sort of where the departure is. We're focusing more on the building and less on tacking on things to the outside. And same, we'll keep it pretty, the focus has been on the bar, the tower part of the hotel, and the horseshoe area would just keep these light accents of the green and the dark gray and the light gray, and kind of they can play off each other along with the landscaping.
Can we go back to the slide before that, so we don't get so far away we forget?
Sure.
In other words, that's the current proposal. And the proposal y'all had before showed a substantial amount of your wood treatment up and covering both of those arches. So that's what you're suggesting is that change?
We are actually going to get into the design of the porte cochere at a later date, so it's not going to be as bare as you see it. That might be a little misleading. This first phase of the project renovation will be the attention to the larger extent of the exterior. The porte
We're
cochere.
likely to see, like, you get this later in the drawing here.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of wood in there. We likely to get to that point at some point.
We don't have it as part of this presentation, but we will see it in a later presentation.
All right,
So
thanks.
we definitely plan on presenting the finishing of that area.
Okay, got a question too, if I could. Main ethos color is just on the end where the chevron joints are, and then the lighter color, which you're calling the accent, looks like everything else. It kind of backwards, it appears to me. The accent's the dark and the main field of everything else is the lighter gray.
Yeah, the darker gray will be where the P-tacks are below the guest room windows. So that'll be your darker gray, and as well as on the end panels. And then. that
So
makes
where's the
sense.
lighter gray then?
At the
First
kind of,
floor?
sorry. This is,
I mean, I guess maybe it's a little bit obvious, but it's.
so you've got lighter gray here, and you've got lighter gray at the base where it comes down to the ground.
And at the other fins there at the front doors, those are the lighter gray? Everything,
Here.
yeah, all of that.
I believe those are like, yes, at the base. And then, so the darker gray would be up here to kind of blend the P-tacks with the repaint, or we cover those as well.
Okay, carry on.
The rest of the images are a little, instead of a sketchier axon, these are just more of the elevation views, so just showing you the full extent of the elevations with the green and the colors. You can kind of see the difference between the darker and the light gray colors here a little bit better. So we're carrying that chevron pattern to the opposite end of the tower bar portion of the building as well. And it's just the opposite end side of the horseshoe. Details for the wood cladding at the portico share for those fins where they come down to meet the ground. There's our palette that we're working with. Similar colors and textures to the previously approved concept. And then we can get into how the elevations are actually compared. So if we would like. All right. So, so yeah, we did look at minimizing the wood tones and focusing on other elements. So, what any comments?
I guess if we go back to the first question I asked you, if it's going to be staged, I wasn't aware of that from the presentation. What
Okay.
you're saying is the porte cochere is going to be staged. Can you go back and show us what's changed here? Because we asked for the materials which are getting passed around now. But just so it's clear, what is different from what we approved conceptually? That's just so we know. Like if the porte cochere we approved conceptually, but that's now not part of this presentation.
I'd say it's pretty much all different. I don't see where it's a whole lot like it used to be at all on anything. You've got new colors, less wood, chevron scoring. I mean, it's not the previous application. I mean, everything changed. Different colors.
It was a
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can speak to that a little bit more. A couple points just to help clarify. This submittal is coming more from a place of practicality in that the exterior of the building and the roof need to be redone immediately. It's in really bad condition, and while we have the season, we want to take advantage of that. So in particular for this, it's only the materials that really affect the skin. So that's why you're only seeing the faux wood where it's actually becoming a siding element as opposed to a decorative element, and you're only seeing the eave staffs and the roof. The departure came from, as with any renovation project, there are things that come up as you get further along in the project. And one of the things that we realized was that the quality of the exterior was in much worse condition than we originally thought. So in October, when we presented this, we were painting most of the building. Now we're doing all new EIFS and all new direct applied through the entire skin. So the focus is changed a little bit from where we were. Specifically for the porte cochere, because that is more of an additional design element and not a critical construction maintenance issue, that is something that we're looking to come back to you and show, just because we have an urgency to get this work done now while we can with the weather. But we understand what you're looking for there, and we're gonna work with 3877 to develop that.
I mean, in terms of what we had before and where we all think this was going, was a follow-up to what we had before. And as Neil's pointing out, it's completely different. So to give a final approval on something we gave a conceptual approval that we're not seeing tonight, I think we have to discuss that. If there's enough being shown that it stands on its own, then it's a new project. I think that's kind of where Neil's going with this, and I agree. So it's not like, oh yeah, it followed everything, they changed the colors a little bit, here's your final approval. I guess we're all gonna have to take a little bit deeper look at this and say, this is all we're seeing right now. Something's gonna happen with the portico share in the future. If you got more immediate needs, understand that. So I guess all the members of the board, let's take that in, that this is not just a follow-up to a conceptual, it's basically a whole new project, I think is what we're seeing, for whatever reasons. And you told us what the reasons are. So I think given that, let's look at it that way and see, do we think this stands alone as it goes? If they come back in 6 months and have this great design for portico share, fine, but it's not here now, okay? I think we just have to look at what's here and decide if we can go as far as the final or another conceptual. I don't think any of us want your roof to fall in or have people up on the 4th or 5th floors have leaky ceilings, but, okay, so let's, with that in mind, everybody kind of take a look at all this. You guys gave us a nice little bunch of more drawings here. If anybody needs another 5 or 10 seconds, I'll give it to you. Okay, time's up. We'll start over here. Nick, let's start with you.
So, given kind of new information that we heard about the process and why you kind of changed the design up, I could easily see this coming back in and incorporating some of those items we saw from conceptual approval into this, and it'd still be becoming a harmonious project. So I don't know if I really have any objections to the kind of change in direction that was presented tonight from my perspective, but I'm curious to hear what the rest of the board members have to say.
All right. Mr. Wood.
Well, I personally miss the wood. It sounds like it might have gotten valued and engineered out. It may come in the future depending on budget. I can't tell if I like the green or not. I see the sample. The sample looks better than the images. I'm still on the fence that it's going to be, I don't know, it's very repetitive feeling. Like from the front, you don't notice it, but then when you go around the side of the building, it just seems like it's almost, I don't know. It's still kind of up in the air for me for that standpoint. Otherwise, I like, overall the design is going to be an improvement, and the chevron pattern I think works nicely. I'm still not sure on the green, but that's just, I wasn't on the board last time, so this is the first time I'm seeing the project completely. So I personally lean more towards the wood look, but that's just kind of my feeling.
Okay, thanks. Ken?
Yeah, I guess I just have to pile on to what Michael said. I too was appreciative of the initial design. I'm still trying to get my hands around this one. They may appear subtle, but to me, I was getting used to seeing the building sort of more wood tone, et cetera, et cetera. I too am having, I guess I just need to see what it's going to look like conceptually all the way through versus being staged. It's difficult for me to sort of give a piecemeal opinion at this point in time, especially when my prior expectations were set around all of the wood tones. Overall, I guess it's okay, but I sure would like to see the rest of the story.
Bruce?
I don't miss those wood tones on that. So that wasn't my issue. I don't know how to do this in a phased approach, and I think is the real question I have, how we would approach that.
Mr. Roseberry?
So I think it's one of Reston's iconic buildings in a it's still a Sheraton hotel, but it's part of that high hill there in Reston of the International Center, kind of, has been there a long time. It's very visible. I don't know, from when you first put it up and I was looking at the green, and wasn't so sure about it to where I am now, I'm really sure I don't like it. I'm really sure I really don't like it. I think it's not what Reston needs to be doing to its older iconic buildings. I think that's, okay, we got rid of all the wood, what can we do to give it some life? And we painted that stuff green, and it's, and honestly, when the sample went by, I had a visceral reaction that was even stronger than the renderings. You know, painting up one of these older buildings or coloring up one of these older buildings is kind of the exact opposite result to me of what was previously proposed, which was incredibly sophisticated. And it doesn't surprise me, I suppose, that you couldn't afford to do it if that's kind of what happened, because it was just really sweet. The dark gray is really dark, but I'm maybe okay with that. I kind of got what you were saying. I don't really even like the chevrons. I just don't. I think it's busy. I think it's kind of, you know, it's searching to do something inventive. And, oh, let's do chevrons. I don't know, it just doesn't, it's almost like the paint, except that it's a control joint instead of a paint. It's trying to get a lot out of a little, and I don't think you get it. It's not sophisticated. It's surface applied. It just doesn't elevate the building. So, you know, which begs the question: what do you do with these older buildings like this? And again, if you throw a lot of money at it, you can do something like you proposed previously that was a true transformation. I mean, it was a wow. I mean, I was like, wow. I mean, because, you know, this kind of thing is just really hard to do, because you get people like me that say, no, don't paint it green, that doesn't look good. The architecture out there has some strength to it. I mean, the piers, I would like to think maybe the building's even aged kind of well. It's got strong bones, it's got strong forms. I think one of the reasons it was previously so successful was that it was neutral, and that the wood palette was some color without being as obvious as painting something green. I just think it should be more neutral, and I would not, you know, the only thing constructive I can say is I think the green is not the way to go. And I question maybe if the entire palette is quite right. Do we want a big gray building? I think it's probably okay. The gray is the base building. So there's more than you wanted to hear, but just, I don't think it's right.
Yeah, I gather it's kind of almost a Band-Aid compared to what we had before, because before, as Neil points out, we all really thought, wow, that's really, you're doing it, this is great. I think some of my concern has to do with some of the major elements like the signage. We'll get back to that. The porte cochere, we'll get back to that. The fins, the vertical fins that run all the way around the building. We're discussing the color. It doesn't sound like, although we've only heard from two people, but I'll go along with the green bothers me because it really looks like that. It looks like, well, we got to do something with that. Let's find a really neat color that we can paint it, and it has nothing to do with the rest of the building. And I don't know how you work in an accent that makes sense. I mean, before, with the wood at the porte cochere, then it started traveling around the building. It all started to make sense. This now, too, if you come back with wood at the entry at the porte cochere, and all of a sudden we have these green things that are growing out of these brown things, it looks a little peculiar to me. And I'm not sure what that accent color should be.
Or where it should be.
Or where. I mean, before we had, as I believe, anyway, looking at what we had before, a lot of the vertical elements were the wood, which then tied everything together. I mean, the decoration on the end Well, there's a couple points. I mean, the major elements that have been left off, the wood at the porte cochere kind of drove the bus before. Is what we all said. That's really solid. That looks good. And then it carried around the buildings. We said, that's even better. That's wonderful. And then we got wood accents here and there. The signage, the whole end panel with the chevrons on it leads up to the sign. Yet we're not there yet. You're gonna see that some other time. So we're then kind of sitting here going, okay, well, that's a pretty big deal. That all these things, the chevrons are all pointing at it, it's gonna be up there. If it's like the one that's there now, lit at night, I mean, we don't know, because we're not seeing that. So they're just all these little pieces where before we saw a whole project. It all fit together. It was a very nice design. And now we're getting little bits and pieces for whatever reason, budget, otherwise leaky roofs, whatever. And it's just not as strong as it was. It looks kind of like I said, sort of a Band-Aid. If we want to try to update a little bit, let's paint something green. And I agree with Mike and Neil. I don't think that's appropriate. I'm not sure what color is, but that's for you guys to figure out. It just looks kind of tacky. It looks kind of. There are other buildings here that have been around a long time in Reston. And if you went and attacked them with that colored green and started painting verticals that color, people would be horrified. So, anyway, you guys are allowed to speak. What do you think? I mean, do you agree with what we're saying, or is this, I mean, we're just here to talk and see what we can figure out. A, it really is an all-new project. B, you're hearing some criticisms. Where do we go from here?
I think I definitely heard all of your comments. I wonder if we can kind of look at a neutral palette. If the green is the odd man out, would it make more sense to be kind of I don't know, with a neutral, warm palette and kind of hinting at the wood without being so much of a contrast, or adding a surprise color? Maybe it just.
Well, the question would be, is it possible the wood accent may return at some point? Or is that just done, too expensive?
Not at the scale that we previously showed, given the direction the project has gone.
All right. So we won't be looking for that, so then we're gonna be looking for a color.
I just think you have to be in a neutral palette, whatever it is. If it's
Yeah.
this gray or if it's something warmer. I mean, the architecture to me does have strength, it has rhythm, it has,
Right.
it has strength. And then, I know I've already gone on at length, I'm just having a hard time erasing from my mind older properties that get painted up.
Okay.
And I don't want to do that in Reston on this prominent site. And I know it's not paint, I know it's integral, it's part of the ethos. I just don't, you need to go with what the building brings you. If you're not going to add something as strong and as transformative as the wood was, then I think you mostly have to stick with the bones that it has. I mean, that's what you're left with. And you need to do something that's just a little less primary color and a little more neutral, sophisticated. I mean, this is nothing like the blue apartment tower around on Sunset Hills, but that gets a lot of comment in Reston. How did you approve that? Well, actually, it wasn't in our purview. This is in our purview, and I'm not saying this has anything to do with that building per se, but we will get commentary on that green, and I'd be the first person saying it too.
I thought one successful thing about the wood also, it covered up some of the PTAC vents, which I'm assuming need to be all replaced with the new ethos.
No, they'll be painted to match.
They're just gonna be painted, okay. So I personally hate the PTACs, but that's just me. So I thought they broke those up, but I don't know if there's a way to work in any bit of wood. I mean, because the wood is just a rain screen, right? So it's just, would you still have to do the ethos behind it? Is that essentially, it's an additional kind of item on top of the ethos already?
The previous design, yes.
Yeah.
The current, what we're showing tonight, it's an integral part. It's like siding, basically.
Okay.
It doesn't go in front of the eaves.
So it's not a rain screen now for that entryway, it's an actual wrap on the, whatever it is, concrete block or whatever those columns are.
I think back to the colorization, I think as I'm looking at your renderings, it appears that just the front face of the vertical elements are being painted the accent color. We'll quit calling it green for now. And the rest of the sides that go back into the building are, I guess, the lighter gray. And it starts a competition between the structure, the color, and the finishes that I would look at that and see if, like between two of the major vertical pieces, you have a smaller vertical piece that doesn't break the band that's down lower. I don't know, if you go to, what is it, 3877? Whoever's got the clicker.
That's not.
Yeah, which,
No.
sorry, that's not sure a firm name, but,
No, okay,
Which-
never mind. Okay,
So-
that's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
Because like you got the ones that go from the ground to the roof, and then you got the ones in between. And that vocabulary that you have on the building, but then if you're just painting the outward face, the accent color, whatever that ends up being, to me, it I don't know, just kind of cheapens the look. Those things are such a structural part, and all of a sudden we're painting them to look like a 57 Chevy, and that's kind of a problem. I used to have a 57 Chevy. But I would just look at that, it doesn't quite, like I said, it cheapens it, and the bigger buttressy kind of shapes down below, to just have the face painted, it just doesn't look right. It just doesn't look right. It looks like what Neil said, you're painting up an old building, and it's gonna look ghastly. I know that sounds horrendously critical, but it is.
we were looking to kind of subtly accent those. I can see where the green is kind of pushing it a little too much in one direction, but we were looking to accentuate the existing architecture because it's so strong and to kind of build on that rhythm. So instead of really like grasping the color and making those huge, colorful or accented moments, just have like subtly hint at those moments as you go around the building. So that was the
I mean, maybe it's just one too many accent color. I don't know if you want to think about that. Your project to design, but if those major buttressy kind of elements match the other accent color, the dark gray or whatever that becomes, I mean, something starts to tie the building together. Before, all the wood and the wood running around tied it all together. And that's kind of what I see missing here. There's nothing that's really pulling it together. So if all those major buttressy, I don't know what else you want to call them, were the dark gray and everything in between them faded out to whatever light gray or whatever you've got, it might be kinder to the building. It would keep its general sense of design. Just something to look at. Anyway, does anyone have any other comments? I'll take that as a no. You guys have anything else you'd like to add? Having a client lawyer. Okay. All right, then we're gonna need some form of a motion up here.
Mr. Chair, I move that we defer the application for final and ask that the applicant restudy and resubmit.
I'll second the motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. We'll be here again in a month. Same group.
We'll be here too.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're going to look at the Design Review Board amendments to the Design Review and Covenants Administration Resolution 8. Oh, or we want to go back to the first, I'm sorry, correct. We got to go back to the first one now, Thrush Ridge Road. My bad, I forgot that. The, it's an appeal.
No,
with no appellant. Appellant, close enough, works for me. I don't know what else to say about this. I read through the letter, the 4-page letter that accompanied the application or the appeal.
You were on the original panel?
Right, so I can't vote, so I won't vote. But I think our basis to grant an appeal are two. One is providing new information that wasn't available to the panel that made the original decision. That's it, whatever. New information and/or design guideline that was misapplied.
Did it look like he went out, the applicant actually went out and hired an architect to do plans? Because the letter kept making it sound like this guy was drawing it himself, which there were some hand-drawn portions which showed a completely different addition than what was actually in the architecture drawings. So I was very confused. Did he submit new drawings?
I think he just had the wrong address on the initial set of plans that came in with the right plans presented.
Okay.
Yeah, because the plans that came to the panel,
You saw the full architecture set?
there you go, right there.
You saw those? Okay.
Yeah, that's what we saw.
Okay.
And there.
Okay.
Is the two appeals, one is a neighbor that's connected via party wall, is that correct?
Mhm.
And where's the other appeals of the board, the cluster president that was here, or just another resident in the cluster?
I thought it was just the neighbor.
No, I think it is the president.
Yeah,
The
the
president
neighbor-
too?
They signed it as the
Yeah, it was
president.
a neighbor that submitted the appeal request.
Okay, so, and she was here at the original,
She-
okay.
Well, we certainly know that she doesn't want this to have happened, but I haven't been able to see, reading through this, and I would ask you guys as staff, do you see any new information that came in? Because I am missing it.
No.
I mean, in the end, we're not just rehearing it, even if she was here, it's not just a rehear, is there new information or a misapplication? This is a pretty straightforward addition. She's not ever gonna like it apparently, but I can't see that it's anything misapplied and I don't see any substantive new information. That's the way I see it.
The way I read it is that it's sitting back 2 feet from the party wall, so I'm not sure how, and she's out in front of him, so I'm not really sure how that would ever,
Right.
how you could ever stand on her property and actually have this thing block a view unless you're trying to look into their house.
Yeah.
I mean, at least that was my understanding of the drawing, so unless I'm reading it wrong, I mean, that's, I think otherwise, as long as it's installed properly, I mean, all the other concerns are not really DRB concerns.
Yeah, and you can see from the drawings up there, it was a pretty thorough presentation.
Yeah.
There were a lot of discussions about structure on the party wall, crickets, the roof shape, how do you waterproof the brick wall, the water will run it. It went on and on and on.
Yeah.
So everything was explored in depth. So I don't know of anything, my point of view here, that would be new. Bruce?
Oh, not having been here, and that was the first question, is there anything new or anything misapplied? So whether we think it's good or bad, from where we're sitting, and the non-participants, that's the question we have to pass first, and then before we talk anything about the actual drawing.
Right.
And what I'm hearing is that we're not seeing anything new, and there's not
Right,
anything
that was
asserted,
my
there's
only-
nothing asserted that is misapplied. So if that's the case, I would think the first motion would be to deny the appeal because it lacks the requisite elements for an appeal.
Was that a motion?
That was a motion.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Just one question. Do we feel it's unharmonious with the gable versus all the shed roofs that all the other additions appear to have?
That's
Throughout
not
the
part of granting the appeal. We have to, if there's new information.
Well, he's saying that would be a misapplied.
Well, would that be unharmonious? So I'm just curious, just throwing it out there. Do you guys feel that or no? You think it's okay?
It's not so disharmonious. I mean, even if it's not the roof shape that you might first imagine for this, it's not so wrong to me as to rise to the level of unapproval or not in conformance with the design guidelines. It's workmanlike, it's symmetrical, it composes with the second floor windows. So I don't see how we can criticize another panel for saying this isn't harmonious. I mean, that's kind of the first thing you consider.
Okay.
And that is somewhat subjective, undeniably.
Any further discussion? There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain, I think you have to abstain too.
Oh, I have to abstain, sorry, we have to, yeah, we're on the original
I knew we were gonna do that.
ballot. Oops, my bad. Okay.
Go down here.
Okay, now, back to where,
Resolution 8.
resolution 8. No matter what we try to do, this keeps coming back.
And it's still number 8.
So
Here it is again.
we made some edits to this resolution for reviews of appeals. We often get questions about attendance for reviews of appeals. And so the resolution has been edited for, starting at page 4, in regards to who is whether we were going to review appeals if the appellant or the appellee cannot be present. So the resolution has been amended to say that the appeals will be reviewed at the next available DRB meeting, whether or not both parties are present or not. The rest of the editing has been courtesy of our general counsel, has been wordsmithing this just on basically the formatting of the resolution, but the change is really in terms of the appeal, because of questions that we've received in terms of people asking to defer the appeal, hearing the appeal, based on people's availability. And we didn't feel that it was appropriate for the original applicant to be put off time and time after because of people's availability. So that's the edit to the resolution.
So that's why we had to do that whole email exchange where we had to,
Yes,
and this would get rid of that need to do
correct.
that.
Well, not exactly. So you still have the flexibility to grant a continuance.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
If you look at paragraph C, and I'll be honest, this is a court standard as to what judges will apply in granting continuance. In unforeseen, an emergency comes up, my kid is sick, and more importantly, is not due to a lack of preparation and doesn't unduly prejudice the other side. So for instance, in one of the appeals that came tonight, or the appeal that came tonight, I believe it's a screen-in porch, as I recall, and half the summer's gone. So the individual could clearly claim prejudice in that, okay, I'm gonna get to install this, in December and not enjoy it. So factors to give the DRB the flexibility to grant or deny.
What, are those factors kind of ambiguous? If I had a vacation planned 6 months from now and the appeal date fell on that,
I think you have a good argument if you have vacation plans that were 6 months ahead, because it's not from a lack of preparation. And it's a weighing test. If I don't want an appeal because I decided I'm going to the Kentucky Derby on a whim, that should not sway the DRB. And again, it says very clearly, continuances are not expected to be the norm.
But it also suggests that it can be had without too much trouble if due cause is shown. And to me, we want to reserve all the rights, unless that's entirely appropriate. Because the norm is that we're not going to do continuances, why do we then make it sound like a continuance for good cause is so easily had?
We could change continuances shall to continuances may be granted upon a showing of good cause.
Yes.
That is not a major issue. And then, the important thing is that we want to at least give the members the satisfaction of knowing that if an emergency comes up, my child is sick, I can't make it, a reasonable request for a continuance will be heard by this and considered by this board.
it does not unduly prejudice.
Yeah, I think changing the shall to may, and just for clarification, the current process is, or I gather this lets a consultation decision be appealed and it goes to a panel. Can the applicant then chase that on up to the full board? If they say the panel did what we just did, no new information, we don't grant the appeal. Does it stop there, or they can then go on to the full board? They go to full board. But normally, if someone doesn't like a panel decision, so a consultation thing can go to a panel, and then the panel goes to full board. If it's a panel decision, and you don't like it, you want to appeal it, it just goes directly to the full board. In the business, if we have the tie vote, then that hasn't changed, that was in there before. It goes to the RA board.
I had a question about, maybe I'm just missing this. If this goes to the issue of someone can't be here, like the person tonight, could they have sent someone in their stead under our rules?
Yes, they can do it.
Yeah.
And we usually suggest that, but there are times that people insist, no, you have to accommodate my schedule. And I think it's better if we clearly have something in writing that just says, this is our policy, this, you know, and just want to do that. Because otherwise, it's just like, well, why are you telling me that? And we don't want to just say, it's unaware of it.
I'm not disagreeing, I was just.
My mother said so.
Yeah.
I was really thinking that it's really, you have, if you're not gonna get a continuance, you still have a way to be heard.
Well, I still don't know what constitutes good cause. By this very definition, wouldn't the woman tonight have had good cause, but she didn't get a continuance?
That's why we're adding may instead of shall. I mean, good cause is intended to be a catch-all. Again, the board is still going to have to weigh in on this, but, you know, if I just decide that I gotta work late on a whim, is that necessarily good cause? I don't know. You know,
But who makes that decision? We do?
You do.
Yeah.
When I also think the application tonight, they had already been delayed once because of something at some point for the original application or something. Or maybe not. I thought originally the reason why the application tonight, we sent out the email, because that applicant had already been denied already from starting, or I think a month and a half or whatever, since their approval, because we couldn't get to it or something.
Now, the first time around, the affected party was not notified in time, so it got pulled off the original panel, so they got delayed.
Right.
They got put on the next panel. So, I mean, the affected party had quite a bit of time to review the information, so it isn't as if they didn't have enough time to review.
And they attended the first meeting where you guys approved it, or
Only one of the two affected parties.
the neighbor that did not?
No, the neighbor wasn't there. I think it was the president of the cluster.
I just was.
I didn't oppose it.
But kind of going back to what I think was just brought up, so if the individual asks for continuance, and then the DRB decides what is an appropriate cause, so then we put that back to the DRB to decide, is this a good enough cause to grant a continuance? So continuance granted is determined by the DRB. So I guess we float that back out to them.
Correct, because,
Right.
I mean, the DRB runs its meetings. And so we can't, there's no way that I could write a resolution that had a catch-all for every one of life's emergencies. And we want to protect the, sovereign ability of this board to administer its affairs. And, getting back to your question about whether, is your question, Bruce, they can designate an agent, they can also submit on the papers. And if they had put in something, here's my new information, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, here's how you misapplied the guidelines, this board is perfectly capable of considering that and make a finding.
Right, okay.
Which was, I mean, they did do that tonight. We reviewed it and determined that it
Well, also, I guess,
really wasn't new stuff.
all the stuff was sent to us
Yeah.
to decide if there was good cause,
Well,
which
and
we can
even
do by email,
after-
which is what we did.
Even after we said that we wouldn't be able to defer tonight's appeal hearing, I asked the affected party, I said, if you want to submit an additional statement, please do so for the retreat and submit anything else. But they're always given that opportunity.
But in the process, I guess the question I'm asking is that what we just did was all voting by email whether there was good cause and reason for a continuance, and we all said no. So that's that would be our process, that's what we do. We do have to wait till our meeting and then say, no, there's, we
It
can
would
do
depend
that.
on if there was unanimous consent to,
Yeah.
if you unanimously decide not to grant the continuance, you can do it electronically.
Okay.
If not, you may have to do it at the
Okay.
meeting. You know, we are bound by the statute.
Yeah, no, that's fine, that's fine. That's why you were chasing Bruce, because Bruce was avoiding you.
I will take it personally.
Well, I think
You weren't supposed to
just
say
to say again, I think the issue for me was, you know, someone's applied made an application to the Design Review Board. They've been approved, it's appealed, they're ready to get started, they have workmen waiting, whatever. It becomes a unduly harsh punishment to postpone for an appeal that may or may not even be heard. Which to me is a presumption, you know, I don't know that this is codified per se, but it's a presumption that the applicant has rights once approved that slightly supersede, in my mind at least, an appellant who may or may not be able to make a meeting. It just becomes unduly burdensome to the person who's already gotten an approval, and can be a delay tactic, if nothing else.
Okay. Any other concerns about this?
Just the point about, that you just made about the continuance. Unless we vote ahead of time, the person doesn't know what to do.
Yeah, which is what we did in the case of tonight. We voted ahead of time,
So
that it was
that-
gonna go ahead,
So that,
period.
but I meant in terms of the request for continuance was decided by email. So what I would understand is that would be a more common practice to give the person as much advance notice as.
Right, and as Tony points out, email had to be unanimous, which it was,
No, I understand.
and then that's okay.
But at least they had a chance to, when I'm.
They were heard.
They were heard, yeah.
Yeah. Any other comments, thoughts? No. Who wants to sign their life away with a motion?
Move we adjourn.
We gotta move on this.
I move to.
Go ahead. Okay,
With
good.
the revision for the May.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion in 3 seconds. Take your pick. Okay, all those in favor?
I move we adjourn. Second.
Motion is second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.